Hello, my name's Simon Johnson. I'm a professor at MIT Sloan School of Management in the United States, and I've been asked to speak to you for a few minutes about a topic of my current research, which is technology and global inequality in the age of AI. AI, of course, being artificial intelligence. Now, I don't know about you, but I hear a lot of optimism about AI and all the wonderful things that it will bring. So some people say no one will have to ever work again. At the same time, I also hear pessimism, people being quite worried about the future of work, for example, in the United States, and worried about losing their jobs. So which is it, extreme optimism or extreme pessimism? Well, actually, we think that it's somewhere in between. We think, we will be circulating some slides that have, I'm not going to show you the slides now, but I'm going to circulate them and you can see the references to our work and the work of others that backs this up. Our view is that AI is going to change how we work, and it's going to change the distribution of work and opportunities across all our societies, but we don't expect it to bring a big productivity miracle. So it's going to be profound, it's going to have deep effects, and it may increase the polarization of society, which is something to really worry about, I think, particularly in our current circumstances. But please don't expect immediate economic miracles. Now, the work that I'm drawing on for this talk is primarily a book that Doron Acemoglu and I published in 2023. Doron Acemoglu, you may have heard of. He's my longtime co-author, a co-winner of the Nobel Prize with me this year. And he and David Autor and I run a research group at MIT focused on shaping the future of work. So we're drawing on current research, we're drawing on active conversations with people in the AI space, and a lot of work that we do with companies, primarily in the United States, but also around the world, as they try to understand what they can do with AI, and what they should do with AI. And I think the really key point from our research and our policy advocacy and all of these conversations that we have is that we are now facing a really important set of technological choices. So technology is always a choice. How technology develops is always a choice made by society, a choice made by leaders of companies, a choice made by government in some instances. This time, I think it's particularly important to focus on the fact that we could go one of two ways. Either AI could become really favorable to a few highly educated people, actually to people on this call, probably in your meeting. Highly educated people have done well from digital technologies over the past couple of decades. But if that's the only group that gains, what happens to the middle, people who have got some college, but maybe not a lot of college education? And what happens to people at the lower end of the income distribution, people who didn't go to college at all? Those are really big questions. And our view is that AI could be developed to favor people who are not highly educated. We call it pro-worker AI. So that's a proposal that we have. We think it's an option, a way to move forward. It's something that we work on very actively, trying to encourage in various ways. It's not, I think, and unfortunately believe it's not the current default path for the development of this technology. So just a couple of words of background on inequality in the United States and what's happened over the past 4 decades. You may have seen these rather famous graphs produced by Doron Acemoglu and David Autor, which document what has happened to real weekly earnings in the United States since the 1960s. And if you look at the picture for men, it's particularly dramatic. So men with a lot of education have seen a steady rise in their incomes, real weekly earnings. Men with a middle amount of education, let's say just college education, have had some increase, not as much as the more highly educated, but they've also been squeezed because we've lost a lot of jobs in that category. And at the lower end of the earned income distribution, real wages have barely moved since the 1960s. Now, that's pretty dramatic, and it's really unfortunately true. And of course, that feeds into a lot of the anger and frustration that we've seen for many years, including in the most recent election in the United States. So that's the context in which AI is arriving. It's not arriving at a relatively equal moment. It's arriving at a relatively unequal moment. And the danger is that it will make that inequality worse. It will worsen polarization in the labor market, worsen social polarization, and worsen political polarization, particularly because AI, obviously, you know this very well, feeds very directly and easily into existing digital technologies, including digital advertising. A lot of this advertising already pursues you around the internet and across social media. It's going to become more intrusive. It's going to know more about you, and it's going to grab your attention by maybe making you angry and engaging your emotions. It's not good for you and me, but perhaps we can deal with it. It's really bad for children, terrible for children, actually. And it's very bad for democracy because it's the exact opposite of what you need in terms of reasoned debate and listening to facts. But that is, unfortunately, very much part of the AI landscape, which we wrote about in our book, Power and Progress, which we see evolving now. There are proposals to tax digital advertising quite heavily. We've made one of those proposals. I don't think that's going to get traction anytime soon in the newly configured American political situation. I should also say that we're very concerned about what will happen to global inequality. Now, on this topic, there's much less known. I think the field is wide open for careful study and all kinds of investigation. But of course, as you know very well, a lot of people and countries have done better in recent decades by becoming involved in manufacturing in various ways around the world and selling into global supply chains. Well, if factories become more automated, and we are some distance away from AI really having a transformative effect in manufacturing. But it's coming, and I have very smart colleagues at MIT who work really hard on accelerating the day when that comes. And then the question will be, how many jobs do we have in factories anywhere in the world? And what happens to countries that were previously relying on factories and factory employment to support their population and to drive growth? These are open questions, and I don't pretend that we or anyone, as far as I know, I don't think anybody else has the answer, but I wanted to plant that flag for you. Now, let's step back just for a few minutes into economic history and ask the question, when technological transformations go well, what do they look like? Well, to be clear, there's always automation in any industrial society. In fact, if you go back before industrialization, there were forms of automation. Automation means, of course, we're replacing people with machines. I don't think you can do anything about that. I think that's a natural part of the process of technological development. It's certainly not something we're trying to block right now. However, when automation is combined with the creation of a lot of new tasks for humans, particularly tasks that demand expertise, that's when you get better labor market outcomes for more people. And the reason is quite simple. That automation, bringing the machines, replacing the people, reduces the demand for labor. There may be spillover effects in other parts of the economy, but you can't always count on those, and they haven't worked out very well in the last 40 years. New task creation means people are now doing things that they've never done before. And you've got to pay them to do those things. You've got to pay them to get in the labor force. You've got to pay them to acquire those skills. You've got to pay them to stay with your company rather than go to someone else's company. Now, when Henry Ford, for example, came to Detroit in 1900, all American cars were made by hand. It was an artisanal industry. They were making 20 or 30,000 cars a year with about the same number of workers. In 1929, so 3 decades later, Ford and GM together were making 3 million cars, and the American auto industry employed 400,000 people. Now, most of those people were doing things that humans had not done before. A lot of those tasks required expertise. Many of them had a good wage, and there was also a spread of industrial unions, including some very big confrontations in the 1930s, which resulted in the big gains from productivity increases, which Henry Ford and his engineers had delivered, finally coming through to higher wages for most workers. And it's that same pass-through, the productivity bandwagon, as we call it, when it works well, that's what can actually deliver shared prosperity. And shared prosperity is what we experienced in the United States, in Western Europe, in Japan, in other countries for 3 or 4 decades after World War II. And the mechanism for the sharing of the prosperity was exactly what I said. It was higher productivity, more task creation, pressure from trade unions, higher wages. Now, all of this, of course, raises the question, what will AI do over the next 20, 30 years? And keep in mind that we're already in what I described at the beginning as a very unequal situation. If we have this conversation in 1980, I think we would have been much more optimistic about the effect on society of new technology. But this is not 1980, it's 2024. So we've had 4 decades of increasing polarization. And in those 4 decades, the polarization was mostly due to automation. It was partly also due to globalization and the way that played out. And we're talking about what happened within the United States. We give that a secondary position, but it's still significant. And it was due to the decline of trade unions. So this is the moment when AI now arrives. And of course, AI is an automation technology. I think that's quite obvious. You're replacing people, not the physical labor of people, but the mental labor of people, the thinking of people. Now, AI is not yet ready to do the most creative tasks, although some forms of AI are already incredibly helpful to scientists in their laboratories. I'm thinking of AlphaFold, for example, which was rewarded with a couple of Nobel Prizes this year for chemistry. But what AI is really going after, what it can really be used for, is tasks that have a routine content, routine element of white-collar work. So one CEO I talked with described these jobs. It's not a very nice term that he used, just to warn you, but he's the CEO, and this is how he thinks about things. And here it is descriptive. He called them cut and paste jobs. So people who are cutting and pasting material, they're doing something similar every day. Those jobs are absolutely in the line of fire. And you can go through the entire structure of work in any economy, such as the United States, and you can look at who has that kind of job. And this has been done by LinkedIn. It's been done by McKinsey, Global Institute, all of this work should be taken with a grain of salt. We don't know exactly what AI's capabilities are going to be next month or next year. But I think it gives you a pretty good idea. And when you look at my slides, which we will circulate, you can see the references to this work, and you can click on it and you can look for yourself, and you can decide who's got this right. I think we can agree it's a pretty substantial impact that we're going to be seeing in the United States and in Europe. Those are the places we've had this documented most thoroughly. But presumably it affects workers and wages everywhere. Now, it's not all dark, as I said at the beginning. It is absolutely possible that AI can upskill workers. So there are some very nice studies. Again, look at my slides for the citations and the links. Very nice studies that show specific instances where people working in customer service, for example, are made more competent because they have an AI co-pilot or advisor. Co-pilot, of course, is Microsoft's brand, and I'm not endorsing Microsoft per se. But they have an AI chatbot of some kind that's helping to distill useful knowledge, and they, the human, can use that. So younger workers benefit, workers with less experience benefit. But the problem with that analysis, I think, is it's very good analysis, by the way. But the problem with that interpretation is that the companies that are currently supplementing and complementing labor with this AI technology are also seriously considering replacing all of those workers with an enhanced version of the AI technology. And as I'm sure you're all aware, the way this technology works is it learns from what it encounters. So the humans who are using it are also training it. And in a sense, they are training their replacements. Now, when they will be replaced, we don't know. Will those people go on to get new, better jobs? We hope so. Will we create enough new tasks for the humans who are so affected? We don't know. But that's the key question. And that's what we recommend in terms of policy for the United States, policy for Europe, and policy for absolutely all the countries attended and represented today. Think about how you can create new tasks. Think about how productivity increases can be passed through to higher wages. Think about legitimate and appropriate forms of trade union representation, including encouraging the trade unions to come to the table and help to design and be involved in thinking about how AI can be deployed in ways that benefit everybody who works in a company or works in government. So AI has tremendous potential. We are encouraging everyone to grasp that potential. We are pushing very hard for the development of pro-worker AI. You're welcome to come visit us at MIT. We can show you what we're working on. You can meet lots of other very interesting, talented engineers and scientists at MIT who are pursuing some version of that, perhaps, I hope. And I hope very much this is a conversation that we can continue. Our book, Power and Progress, is available in about 20 languages. It's available around the world. I'm also happy to send you free copies if that would make it easier for you to read, or you'd like your staff to read them. We really just want to facilitate this conversation and prompt more discussion about the future of work, how to get more good jobs everywhere in the world, because I think that is the top priority, and that's a very serious challenge that we face today. So thank you very much for your attention. Please do look at my slides, which will be available to you. You can click on the links, look at the underlying papers. You can follow our work on Shaping the Future of Work initiative at MIT. Again, lots of resources there and lots of additional materials for you to study. And we are just very happy to discuss these questions further with anyone in any part of the world who would like to engage. Thank you very much.